Alright then, so I wanted to do some more FOB operations after I've played that tutorial that comes with the module, but I figured it was a little, let's just say it was a little lean on actual content, so I figured I would upgrade the FOB a little bit and put in a ground generator truck as well as an ammo depot to facilitate rearming as well as ground power, and most of all wheel chocks, which apparently are now default for when you start Cold and Dark with the Harrier, which in some missions in some tutorial missions it doesn't go that well because there's no ground crew available. You can't take the wheel chocks off, so here I took care of that. I like to think so. So in here I'm just initiating the INS align way ahead of starting the engine so I can do the engine startup and all the instruments while that aligning happens. That's why I plugged in the ground power, because if you attempted to do this off APU power, then you screw up the INS because the generator from the APU obviously shuts down while the engine is spinning up. And I also concluded that bombs are not quite enough, and I was okay with going a little heavier. Well, not too heavier, because I'm about to change the fuel down.
Request refueling. Request rearming.
Copy.
So here's just the boarding checklist for startup. You can actually skip this part if you want. Because I think I will have put some chapters down below the timeline so you can actually skip this entire process and me talking if you really want to. In fact, I'm running out of things to say.
Refueling complete.
I do try to follow the C waiver format as much as I can, but here I'm kind of held up because I'm waiting for the rockets to get mounted so I can complete the W part of it. And
Rearming
there's me
complete.
nodding in affirmation that everything's alright. The fuel's rather low at 3,800 pounds, but as we'll see during the landing, it will be just enough. In fact, if I had implemented any sort of minimum fuel supply, I am quite sure we were below it. Here's just me putting the nozzle rotation velocity, and I figured I would go with the dry takeoff because the road that we'll be taking off of is actually rather long, so even with the kind of weight we're carrying, it's quite fine to go dry. The TACAN tuning is a TACAN station that's very close by. I managed to learn how to put a portable TACAN station in, so that's another one of the changes I did to the default mission. Here I'm lengthily contemplating how to set up my lights, even though this is a single player mission and nobody's going to care. How the hell am I setting up my lights? In fact, it would probably have been better for me to engage that seat ejection lever. That seat ejection safety, as you may have noticed a few seconds before. Yeah, that stays up for the whole flight. Now in here I do keep throttling up because we're on rough terrain, so you do actually need to go high to start taxiing, but now I figured that was a little bit too much power and still nothing happened. So that's why.
Chief, remove the wheel chocks.
Now from what I hear on the Harrier forums,
chocks
you're
are
not
now
supposed to be
removed.
able to remove wheel chocks while the engine is running. But as of 2.7.0, that's not a thing. You can just remove them whenever you want, and that's exactly what I did. So now we're finally taxiing onto the quote-unquote runway. I have a perfect tailwind, which doesn't actually bother me that much. I don't think it's too great, but I could have reset that in the mission file. I guess it's more important when you're landing. So we can see the TACAN guy. What's up, TACAN guy? Now it's time to do a wet configuration check. Remember when I told you we would be doing a dry takeoff? Well, I lied. We're doing a wet takeoff. Well, actually I wasn't lying, I did intend to do a dry takeoff, but then I forgot about it and started doing a wet configuration check, and then I just figured I'd just go along with it. And so at this point, nothing is holding us back from an actual takeoff. My seat's killing me, that's why I keep adjusting, by the way. Well, as you can see, it's absolutely quite enough. I'm pretty sure that even if we used a dry takeoff, we would have been well clear of the power lines. Can't believe I actually remembered turning the lights down. Must have had a good day. So the basic premise of this mission, as I may have hinted earlier, is that I have taken the tutorial mission for FOB operations and changed it up a little bit. So the FOB that you land at, I made it the starting spot and made it operational, while the place where you start at, that being the X marks the spot near Capoletti, I've made that the target, where I took the units, flipped them red, added a couple more, and replaced the Harriers with Vigans just so it makes a bit more sense. And besides, Vigans are quite beautiful on the target. What isn't quite as beautiful are my attempts to locate the target visually. It takes a while, but I get there eventually. In fact, the weapon runs you're about to see are extremely sloppy, and I'm surprised I even had enough ammunition to take down all the targets. I decide to dump all of the bombs in one pass, which on its own is not the worst idea, but I also choose to dump them in a CCRP to auto transition mode, which also on its own is not a bad idea, except in here you can see I use the TV to acquire the runway and to acquire a target point, so then a full auto drop would have been the best choice for alignment and for a proper drop. But to be honest, I also like the CCRP to auto transition way too much, and that's why I neglected it here. But then the results speak for themselves, don't they? I'm really not sure why is the bomb queue so far away, but I decide to wing it anyway, and all my bombs are gone now. I also only just now, as I'm narrating this, noticed that I've left my labels on for enemies. And well, it wasn't bad, the bombs didn't fall quite badly, but it only really killed the soldiers. Still, pretty good for what it's worth. So next up are the rockets, which I set up for one pair for each trigger point. Or at least that's what I thought I was doing, but I neglected to remember that rocket pods installed on the Harrier are preset for either ripple or singles, but all of them are wired together. So if I wanted to fire a single pair, the default settings would have been fine, but with the settings I put in, I would be firing 4 rockets in a single trigger press. And I also planned to divide these rockets between the 2 Vigans, but because of this setup I won't have enough rockets left for the other one. Still, I think it should look rather spectacular. A little bit off, but as you can see, some things died, and that's always a good thing. So the only thing left is guns. They will be one of the sloppiest guns you've ever seen, because I'm not that great with guns. Not sure why I was shooting at something that was already dead. But it's certainly dead now. should have taken a left turn. Would have put me on the runway quite neatly. Not like this one. I could understand if somebody questioned that I spread out the strafe to multiple trucks instead of just giving a longer burst to one and killing it that way. I actually didn't know it wouldn't kill it in that shorter time. I thought they would actually all die, and only now I understood that they don't. On the other hand, later they will all die at the same time, which is another decent way of killing them all. As you can see, they all die, well, except for one, at the same time. Now I think that the last one decided to just blow up, just as I decided to destroy it. And now we're done, and we can go back home. Just want to keep my head under the clouds. Please don't murder me. And I forgot the landing course there, so that's why I needed to take a look at it again. So now I'm trying to set up while I'm plummeting to my death, which is absolutely fine. I do that all the time. I'm an experienced professional in almost getting myself killed. And as it turns out, the course line isn't quite working. Sometimes reselecting TACA tends to help it. And you can even see that the course deviation does keep changing on the MPCD, right? But the course line just doesn't work. So essentially, I don't really have much of another choice but to just eyeball it. And since I remember that the course is 079, the reciprocal is going to be an at 2 sub 2 situation, so it's going to be 259. So I practically just line myself up with the 26 mark on the heading tape and I'll be just fine.
Pull up.
The Delta TQ showing us quite nicely where the FOB is sitting. And we're preparing for jet-borne flight. Now in this landing I decided to perform a rolling vertical landing, even though I can very much perform a pure vertical landing, because with 1200 pounds of fuel and no ammunition left except for empty pods, I will definitely be making the 20,000 pound gross weight limit. But let's be honest, doing a rolling vertical landing in a road surrounded by trees, there's something natural about it, even though landing a plane vertically is anything but. So now I'm just cruising, optimal parameters, around 11 degrees AOA, level with the horizon, the TVI, because we want to be at around 300 feet as we enter the final leg. Basically just don't die. A little over enthusiastic with the rudder there. One of the reasons I really like this FOB spot is because of this power line that's right in front of it, as if to remind you that if you don't make it, you're a dead man. I like dangerous places like that. So now it's just all about aligning with the runway, keep the AOA below 12, adjust the nozzles down so that you maintain 60 knots. That's about it. I may be sloppy with guns, but my landings, I actually take pride of it in that. Now I could have started braking right away, but the ending of the runway is far enough, so I don't really want to bother with that yet. Until now. And so that's a successful return home. There isn't much else to say. If you want, you can watch the taxi to the parking area, and I hope you enjoyed watching this, as well as listening to me. Thank you for watching.
Fuel control limiter off.